Everywhere you look around the Chateau domain, you're surrounded by so much beauty, but within that beauty there's also so much decay. Buildings are now in ruin and lost forever, and buildings that are at grave risk of becoming ruins. Each season here brings its own qualities. And in winter we get these beautiful morning frosts with a fog that sits over the Grande Allée. However, winter also is the most unkind of seasons for the chateau. The rain is a catastrophe for our degraded roofs, and when coupled with the freezing temperatures, it penetrates the soft tuffeau stone, freezing with disastrous results. Saving Pernon has very much become a race against time, and put quite simply, it's a race that we cannot afford to lose. So with the works to save the chateau itself through the restoration of the roof and the facades well underway, our mind has now turned to here in the moat of the chateau and our very fragile and terribly deteriorated moat walls.
So we're down in Pernon's dry moat, or douve sèche, as they would say in French. And we know it was always a dry moat because down here in the basement level, many of the rooms have windows in them. So it was designed to not have water in it, to be dry. And its real purpose is to separate living here at the chateau, to keep the domestic staff with their daily chores, which were often focused in the kitchen and other rooms around the basement, separate from the family and their guests who were living on the ground floor and on the first floor. And we're working here in the dry moat because really the east and the west sides of the moat, the stone walls, are in pretty bad condition. And at some stage over the next 5 to 10 years, we certainly would have had to have restored them. But we want to do them a little earlier than that, and the reason why is because here in the moat we'd like to do some landscaping and other things, and we can't do that if we're going to come back later on and disrupt everything that we do with major works on the wall. So better to set to work now. And so we've had a meeting with our architect and the stonemasons who'll probably do this work for us. And they're just preparing the plans and the strategy for approaching it. It's obviously quite difficult because they've got to get their gear down here into the dry moat so that they can work on the wall. And it's also complicated because this wall, this eastern side, which is probably the first one that we'll do, has 5 small caves or cellars in it. Now these weren't cellars for storing wine, sadly. They were almost certainly part of the drainage and water evacuation system for the chateau itself. With its huge roofs, whenever it rained, there was a huge amount of water runoff, and they had to be able to store some of it and evacuate the rest of it so that they could protect the structural integrity of the building. And what we found here in this corner, as we've started to clear the vegetation away, is really quite amazing. As part of that water storage and evacuation system, we've come across this incredible well, and it's no longer in use today, which is one of the reasons why we didn't really know it was here, but it was filled in at some stage. And almost certainly when they filled it in, they filled it with a lot of stone and a lot of earth, but also a lot of rubbish. And so as we start the process of emptying it out, I don't think we'll empty it completely. Who knows, it could be 20 or 30 metres deep, we don't know. We'll just get the upper part of it done. And as we've been clearing it out, we've come across the usual detritus that we find here at Pernon. Broken crockery, broken glass, old bottles, some from the 20th century. Amazingly, an antler from a young stag, or perhaps an older chevroy. It's a bit hard to tell. Someone else will no doubt get online and tell us exactly what that is. But also bits of metal and other things. And then next to it here we have what might have been an old buanderie or an old outdoor laundry. So the water would have moved from the well and into this little room here, and there's actually a connection between the two of them that we've uncovered. And the water in there is really quite clear and clean. So in a sense, even though the system's been decommissioned, it still works quite effectively. And they probably cleaned clothes in here, but took drinking water from the well on the other side. And then as it progresses down the wall, we've got 3 more cellars or 3 more caves down here. And it's really quite clever the way the system worked, because they collected their drinking water at one end, kept that clean and separate, and then it could be moved to a second room where they could have done some washing. And then from there, the water would have continued along behind the moat wall here, most likely, into these rooms. And the end room of this system is actually a latrine. And so in a sense, the water was collected, used for drinking, then the surplus used for washing, and then it would have flowed through here and into this outdoor latrine. And we can still see the last vestiges of it, and then it in turn would have washed through, and there are tunnels here at Pernon which would have taken this wastewater out into the park and the prairie beyond us in an era before septic tank systems. And so there's a lot of work to do to restore this wall. You can see when you look along here the quite disconcerting bend in it, because it's not just the restoration of a wall, but it's also the restoration and the protection of the 5 small caves or cellars that sit inside the wall. So we've got a lot of work to do.
So the goal is to find out if there are stone gutters going along the outside wall of the moat, because we know that there's stone gutters going around the chateau side.
Yeah, and we're basing it on what we discovered when we did the lower courtyard wall. We found stone gutters along the base of the wall in front of the different cellars or the different caves.
Yeah.
And we know that the caves themselves, from what we found over there, we know the caves themselves should have stone floors. And so really a lot of earth has been added to this dry moat over the years.
I mean, a lot, because on the other side, like 50 centimetres or...
It was because we know it covered 2 full steps in the staircase that was totally concealed. Now on this side, it's a little bit less, because we found the level when we excavated the stone gutters on that side. So we know it's a little less than on the other side, but it's still a reasonable amount. And we don't really know what we're looking for, because it's just a hypothesis.
So Frederick said the other day that we have to excavate the tunnel on the western side to get it to the original depth. Yep. And that then the guys, when they come to do the stone work on the wall on the other side, they will excavate the rest of it, but we've got to get all the dirt out of the tunnel and into the moat. And so I don't know where we best start, because if we start over there, we start on the work that we need to do straight away. But if we start here, then we find out if we're actually looking for stonework underneath the soil or not.
Yeah, and we know that it's much easier to have them protect stuff that they know is there, if they know it's there in advance.
This has certainly never been touched, so it's our best, whereas that wall there had that terrible restoration. This has never been touched, so if it's there, this is going to be where it is.
And then I think we do a sondage or a test just to see whether there is in fact stone guttering in front of the walls. I think we do a little excavation inside here, just because I'm curious just to verify that these small cellars do in fact have stone floors. They must have. But we found there were cellars on the other side that you had to step down into.
And I don't think we should bother doing there, because this one has been completely filled with, I don't know what, but like, look how much earth is there. Well, shall we start digging? Okay, so you found the stone floor.
It's going to be quite beautiful. And from that small section, not that that's necessarily indicative, but I think it's going to be in pretty good condition as well. I would say it's about 40 centimetres. It's deep, and the question is did it step down? Was there a step down
is there a
to
step
it?
there? Okay.
Or is it? Are we really at a massively different height, and they've added a much greater volume of earth on the other side than we imagined? But at least we know that's the depth, and when you look at it, that's about right. That's what these
Yeah, because
cellars
it's
normally
far
are.
too. It's not like at the moment. It's too shallow.
Yeah, a human would be hitting their head all
Yeah.
the time.
So do you think the best thing to do is to dig from there where we know the depth is and dig,
Yeah.
keep digging out?
So if we dig towards the threshold, then we'll find a step, or just
Or
a
just go
threshold,
straight through? Okay.
and then we'll be at the depth.
I'm intrigued because in the carves in the back core wall, you don't step down, but to me this looks lower. If you look over at the chateau, this definitely looks lower than over there, or maybe it's just an optical illusion because there's so much soil there anyway.
And there could well be a step.
Okay.
I think the best way to find it is this: find a known level, and then work from that.
Okay, let's do that. Okay.
I just feel like we're making really good progress, and I'm getting quite excited because I reckon another 3 or 4 bucket loads, or maybe 3 or 4 wheelbarrow loads, we might start to see the shape of what we're dealing with here.
Okay.
And it's really quite, I feel like Indiana Jones.
So there's this ginormous piece of stone here. I don't know if it's part of the step. It looks too high to be part of the step to me. But look how big it is.
Yeah, it's got quite a straight edge on this side.
Well, on this side too.
Feels pretty straight to me.
But it's kind of interesting because it is the exact right size for there. It can't possibly be that piece that fell there because look at that. This stone is bigger than that. I mean, it could have fallen from somewhere else.
Should be solved in 6 hours. So that is the weight of an old clock, an old grandfather clock.
Oh yeah. It's pretty heavy. We just need the clock now.
We've got a few clocks inside.
I don't know if we've got any that big though, right? We'll keep it.
So that's unmistakably the step.
Oh wow, okay. You know, I wonder if this is part of the original step then.
It's possible, it's in the right space.
Yeah.
It's about the right, sunk a little bit, but not far off the right height. So the roof's in not bad condition. There's a few spots, the stonemasons will be able to fix that.
The wall there's fallen down.
And on this side here, they can patch that up. And the stone floor looks beautiful. If that's a good example of the condition it's in, then although there's a lot of work to empty it out, this will be quite a nice little spot. Summer dining in the cellar, honey.
You think?
Yeah.
I'm starving. Let's go get some lunch.
So as well as the fragility of the walls, there is a second major problem here in the dry moat. And the problem is this: at the end of the 19th century, when new zinc gutters were installed around the roof of the chateau, the old stone gutters that sat at the base of the building were covered up with tons and tons of earth. Now, we don't know exactly why they did this. Our hypothesis is that they probably did it so that they could plant grass, but also hedges, flower beds and some trees here in the dry moat, and they needed a soil base from which to do that. The problem for us today is that as we expose these beautiful stone gutters around the buildings, the soil level or the ground level in the dry moat becomes quite uneven. And that problem becomes particularly acute here in these two access tunnels. This is the access tunnel on the eastern side of the chateau, and you saw the other day that Flick was searching for the stone gutters that we think lay around the external wall of the dry moat, and really she couldn't find them. We weren't able to find them with the little test holes that we dug. Here in this tunnel, this access tunnel, which is about 10 to 12 metres long, at the same time that they added the soil in the dry moat, so that the ground level remained the same, they added the soil here. Now it's about, 1.5 metres wide, and certainly 10 to 12, maybe a bit longer than that, metres long. So there's a lot of soil we have to move. And this soil here in the tunnel has to come out by hand. No machine can get in here to help us dig it out, but the good thing is that we can dump the soil here in the dry moat, and when the team comes to work on the restoration of the walls, they'll have heavy excavating material in here, and that gear will be able to lift the soil out quite easily. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us to empty the soil here in this tunnel and to find, if we can, the original depth with what we hope will be a really nice stone base. Let's get to work. Well, we've been working all day. We managed to find...
Well, actually, you've been working all day, I haven't.
We do things together. So we've been working all day, and we've managed to find the original stone level, which you can see down here, the original stone floor. And it's really quite fantastic, because when you stand here with the level that they raised it to, I'm relatively short and my head almost touches the top. But if you go into the section where we've cleared, in here, with the stone floor all exposed and a much more normal height, so that people won't be constantly bumping their heads every time they walk into this tunnel at least. And although we've got a little bit more work to do, I'd hoped to finish today, but we haven't. We've cleared quite a lot, and it's quite extraordinary, and it's transformed this little tunnel, and it tells us too the depth that we should be aiming for in the dry moat itself. So all in all, a good day's work.
So we've still got a lot of work to do in terms of preparing the moat for the stonemasons to come and restore the walls. But when they do the work here, they won't actually have to restore every wall here in the moat. There's two sections that have been restored previously, and actually the section behind me has been really beautifully done, and you can see that the stonework fits in perfectly with the original stonework. However, there's a section here on the eastern side which collapsed and was restored in the 90s. However, the restoration wasn't in keeping with the original stonework of the moat, and this work was actually the catalyst for having the property listed with the Monument Historic to ensure that it was protected and no work like this would ever be conducted here again, and that everything that was done here at Pernon moving forward would be to a high quality and honest to the chateau's origins. And so when we do restore the moat walls here, we won't go back and redo the work that's already been done. We'll come up with a plan in the future about that. But a lot of work to do here. Quite exciting for us actually, because these walls just cause us so much fear. Every time a car arrives, we're worried about it driving too close to the walls and damaging them. We're worried about sections collapsing. There's already large stones that have already fallen. There's sections that are buckled very badly, and when we have people here, especially during the Journée du Patrimoine, it's a lot of work for us to rope off and ensure that nobody comes near these walls. They're simply too dangerous to come near. So we've got a big job ahead. Our stonemasons have a big job ahead, and we will keep you updated.